In this lesson, we're going to go over surfaces in Maya. Surfaces are a mathematical representation of a 3D object, usually defined by curves. We just had a lesson on curves and working with curves in Maya. So you need to go over the curves lesson first. Curves are fundamental to working with Nurbs surfaces, and Nurbs stands for non-uniform rational B-splines. So they're very high-level mathematical equations that define what an object is. Now you can create a Nurbs object in Maya just by using some that has a thing called Nurbs primitives, just like we have Polygon primitives. Now for dealing with Nurbs, normally in Maya, you'll start off and you'll be in the default shelf here, which is the polygon modeling shelf here. But you'll go over here to the curves and surfaces shelf here. And you'll see, just like in the curves lesson, we went over some of these curves, and you're going to need these to create some of these curves. We're not going to create the curves in this lesson. I have them pre-built. I'm going to show you how to create the actual surfaces. And then there's some tools in here. These are some of the primitives you have. And these are some of the tools. Like you'll have Revolve, you'll have Loft, you'll have Planar. What I'll do is the first thing I'll do is I will show one object here. This is a Nurbs Sphere. Okay, this is a sphere. If you notice, it looks a little different than a polygonal sphere, and it's not a polygonal sphere. So what I'm going to do is if I go over to the modeling toolkit, if I use some of these tools here, you can pick points on. You can use the Vertex tool in here, but you can't use anything else. Like you can't, there's no edges. You can't, it doesn't have edges to pick, and it certainly doesn't have faces. It does have these lines. It'll let you pick these lines, but you can't really do anything with them. Okay, so just be careful. Like if you happen to create a Nurb surface, sometimes you'll create one of these and you don't know it, and I'll show you what happens in Maya today when you're dealing with that. Okay, so but you'll see they're interesting. They work. Let me show you just quickly how they'll work. They're a little bit different than. They're a little more rubbery. So they have some nice things about them. They can be like they're a little more organic. And Nurb surfaces actually are where a lot of the organic modeling first came from. So back in the 1980s, they started modeling cars with these things called Nurb surfaces. And that actually was the beginning of using 3D modeling for industrial design, automotive design, and things like that. So, all right, let me just delete this out. Okay, I'll get back here, and I'm going to show you the different tools to create these surfaces with. Okay, so again, like I said, it's going to be based on curves. And these are some of the curves we've gone over here. So I'm going to show you this first set. I've already created these, so we don't have to spend time creating a whole bunch of Nurbs. I want to show the actual tools. So what I did was I created a circle with this tool here. And then you can either duplicate it and copy it up, or you can create an array. You can go duplicate special and give it a distance. There's a lesson on that. So if you want to figure out how to do that, you can go over that lesson. But anyway, what I'm going to do is it's called creating a loft. So I'm going to basically create a surface from this curve to that curve to that curve to that curve. And the term loft actually comes from ancient boat building, because ancient boat buildings, they would build the ribs for a boat, and then they would bend a big plank over the whole ship hull, and that would be your lofting. So that's called lofting. Okay. So lofting, there are these tools here. I generally tend to go to the pull down for surfacing tools, because they do have some complexity. There's a lot of things in here. The stuff on the shelf is a little basic. Okay. So I'm going to go to Loft. Each one has a little dialog box here, and I'm going to go over some of what's in these in a few minutes, because there's also a way to use surfacing tools and create polygons as well. So I'm going to show you 2 ways to do that, and you'll need that, because that'll make it these surfaces really useful, because then you can go back and use your polygon toolkit tools. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a loft here. So first thing, it's going to want me to pick, and it makes sure to pick in a certain order, right? So you have to pick your first one, then you have to shift select the next one, shift select the next one, shift select, and shift select. And always do in sequence. Don't do it like, don't go from the first one up to the second to last one, and then the last, because then it gets confused, because it's going to want to send the surface along, the length of the curves. Okay, so I'm going to go to surface, and I'm going to go to loft. Okay, so now there's this surface here. Okay, now if you notice, if you go over here in outliner, it doesn't say poly, it says surface. Okay, so you'll also, whenever you create something like here, I have this thing, I have a box here, you'll see that symbol if it's a polygon object, and you'll see this symbol if it's a surface. Okay, so now there's something interesting about what happens here with these is, I'm going to pick it. So usually what I'll do is, after I've lofted something, I'll put the surface on its own layer. And then, because I'm going to show you something quite interesting here. So then I'm going to put in reference mode, okay? Or I can put in template mode too, so you can actually see what's going on with the curves. All right, so let me go to a side view here. All right, so you see I have the curves that have made this thing up. So now these have an interesting quality. I'm going to pick these two, and I'm going to move them. Okay, oh, look at that. So what happens is, between the history, the surface has history in it. Okay, and I've talked about history a few times. If we go over here, return to reference mode now. So you see now, these are fun because you can now, like, I mean, you can do all kinds of things with these things. So like, say this one, I might want to rotate it up. I'll rotate it 90 degrees. I'll make it exact. Okay, I can, maybe I want to make it smaller. Make it small. Okay, I can do this. I'll scale that one down. See? So, and then if you're doing organic things, or like a sculpture or something like that, or some jewelry, or a car, or a crazy character, you can see how these things could be kind of interesting. Okay, and then let me try here too. If you right click on, make sure, like I said, make sure your surface is on a layer and it's in reference mode. Okay, so I'll hit the control vertices. Okay, so I got a few control vertices there. Say I want to pick this one, that one. Yeah, I could do, things like that. This is, the resolution's a little low, so it's getting a little chunky like that, but you can increase the resolution. All right. So that's why these are pretty nice. And especially if you get into advanced like car modeling, for sure, you'll be working with this, or car styling, specifically the bodies and things like that, the seats, things like that. You'll be using these. Okay. All right. So I am going to, let's delete this. I'm going to go on to some of the next ones. Okay. That was lofting. That's the first thing here in this one here. Planar is pretty simple. Planar is just, I have 4 lines here. You just pick them, and then you go to surface. This is just, you want to make a flat plane. Okay, that's all that happens with that one. But if you want to make a perfect plane or something like that, it's very useful. Okay, so then the next one, we've gone over Revolve. Well, actually, like, got the plane on, so let me turn it off first. Let me do this. Okay. All right. So actually, I'm going to use this one here. This one's a little nicer. So I drew this very carefully over an image plane. So here, let me go into this scene here. So here's where curves and an image plane work out really well. So this one I did a very detailed, very clean drawing here. So I do this curve here, and you can adjust everything. Sometimes you can just have a sketchy thing, and then you can come in here, and this is almost like kind of doing your ink work. So yeah, very nice. So I just drew, and then in the last lesson too, I showed how to draw lines. So if you want to draw lines, or I can show you quickly how I would have done this. I'm going to do this actually out here, but so I would just draw lines. I'm not doing this very neatly, but this is how I would have drawn this. Okay. Okay. And then I would have been able to adjust these Well, I am maybe able to adjust these, but let me do a control vertex. You can't really see it very well because let me turn off. I can't really turn off the image plane here. Anyway, so I'm like I'm adjusting these, pulling the points. Okay, so you see, you know, you can do whatever you want with these. And what I would do is actually I would adjust the image plane here. Let me try and get to the image plane so we can see this a little better. And which one do I have? Maybe I have image plane in here. Yeah, there we go. I have the image plane here. So we go over to our attribute editor. Oh yes, there we go. Okay, let's put down to 0.2. There we go. That'll help us see. Yeah. Okay. So this would be an example of like using curves with image planes. So let me go back here, do control vertex. Now you can see. Okay. So I've shown that before, but now you see an instance where that is very useful. Okay. So basically you would just go in here and you see if you work with any kind of 2D graphics program where you're used to working with splines, you'll find working with curves in Maya really nice. If you're working architectural programs, they are a little different. Spline curves are definitely a bit different than some of the curve tools you'll find in architectural programs. They're a little more kind of rubbery, and there is a way to make them kind of very straight. I'm not going to go over that right now. This is just, you know, the basics to get you all up to speed with this stuff. And I would just, at first, if you're going to play with these, have fun with them because they're very organic, right? And if you like curves, they're really nice. Okay, all right. So actually, I'm going to delete that one because I already have a curve for that one. So I'm going to delete it. So the next tool, and we've used this before on a project, but I'm going to use the Revolve tool. Okay, so now you would pick the curve here, and you always have to make sure your pivot is at the center point where you're going to revolve. So we've gone over pivot points. If you don't, if you have a pivot point over here, then that's where it's going to find its center. Okay, so I'm not going to go over that right now, but if you do find that happening, that's what is happening. So I'm going to go to revolve. Okay, so there we go. Now I have this object revolved. Okay, I'm going to turn off the image plane. So that was nice. See how nice and clean that was? Really quick and easy. I'm going to use this model here to show something else. So this also is a surface. Usually surfaces, you'll see they're lighter. They don't have as many lines in them to make them look as clean, okay, or as high resolution because their representation is mathematical. Okay, so I'm going to delete this. Right, I'm going to select this. But I'm going to go back up to the surfaces revolve, and I'm going to open up the option box here. Okay, you don't have to get worried about all the different things that are in this box here, but this is an important one. So when I finish up this, setting this up, what I would suggest is if you're watching this in the video, do a snapshot of the scene because you'll have some of the settings here right here. Okay, so in here, don't worry about these axes. You can rotate around. So I'm going to rotate around the y-axis, but if you want to rotate something around the x-axis or z-axis or whatever you wanted, you could do a half sweep if you wanted. So you could type in 180 here. We're not going to worry about tolerances. Segments, if you want something to be pretty high resolution, you can set segments, especially with the Nurbs. But here, what I'm going to do, this says Nurbs here, output geometry. I'm going to change that. Now, this is very important. This is the key thing learning in this lesson here, or this part of the lesson, is Nurbs. Okay, so I'm going to switch this to Polygons. That's very important. Now, this opened up a new set of options here in the window. Okay, so watch what I'm doing here. I don't want to, the type, I don't want to be triangles, because remember, triangles are no good for continuing modeling in Maya if you want to do any kind of sculpting or upresing, things like that, because triangles don't divide properly. Quads divide exactly in half. Now, a lot of this stuff here is if you want to have, you can control how it sweeps around by its curvature. Don't get worried about that right now. The easiest thing for beginning students is to switch it to count. This means polygon count. So polygon count means basically it's the equivalent of pixels in a 2D image. So if you had a 1K image, that would be 1,000 pixels. So if I change this to 1,000, okay, and I hit apply, it'll have 1,000 of these faces, okay? So if I wanted more, say I wanted more resolution, I could make it 2,000. Pick it. Now, if you notice, it's getting a little tighter there, so to get that lip a little better, okay? So, and then if you want it really high resolution, say I'll give it like 5,000, okay? So I'm gonna pick it, okay? So you see now it's starting to, it's getting pretty, you're starting to get much more detail on it, okay? So, but the great thing about that now is, now that I've done this, okay, these are polygons. These are no longer NURBS. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here. Now I can pick these by faces, okay? I can pick all these faces, all right? So if I wanted to do something, now it's directly polygons, okay? So that's where that tool is useful. And that you didn't have that capability before in Maya. Only about 5 or 6 years ago, they started allowing you to do that. So that's very nice, because before you used to have to do a whole conversion process, which I'll show you that too. But anyway, that's what this Revolve is. So I'm gonna delete that one. I'm gonna turn off these curves. Extrude. Here's another one that people like. So this is an extrusion. So extrusion is basically like making spaghetti with a pasta maker, right? So you have, here's what you call, this thing is called the extrude path. Okay. Hold on one second. Let me turn that. Whatever reason it's not selecting. Why am I not selecting here? Oh, no, I'm in component mode. There we go. All right, there we go. I was wondering what's going on here. This is called the profile curve, and this is called the path curve. So the profile is the shape you're going to extrude. So you can make this whatever you want. I'll show you 2 ways. I'll show this just as a circle, and I'll show you something we're going to do with it, and then I'll show you it as a form. Okay, and then this is the path. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this. You pick the profile first, and then you pick the path, and then you go up to surfaces, and you go up to extrude. Okay. Let's see. Let me check something here. I'm going to pick this, pick this. Let me see. Did it extrude? Let's see. Ah, I already had this set up for, oh, you know what? It will remember your last polygon set. I was noticing it looked pretty dense there. So I don't want that thing so dense. So I really just want it maybe 1,000. Probably even too much there. Let's go 500. Oop, have to delete it first. Okay. I'm going to go very low just for this example here, and I'll show everybody why. So let's just do 200 the default. Okay. Pick this, pick this. Okay, there we go. So this is pretty light. Okay. So I'm going pretty low. I don't want to go pretty much too much lower than this. Okay. But what I'm going to do now is, here's something I'm going to show to everybody. And remember this tool here, the invisible mode, X-ray mode. So this is going to allow me to go through the model, but then to be able to pick on the curve. So again, whenever you extruded something or made a surface out of something, put it on its own layer. Okay. And then make that layer a reference layer. Okay. Or make it a template layer, because you're going to need that, or else it's going to keep trying to pick that layer and you won't be able to pick the curve. And let's go, and every window you have to set. So I'm going to put on X-ray mode again here. Okay, so we're in the front view. Now, a few students have shown me a few pieces with very kind of extrudy bendy forms. So let me show you what's going to happen here. So we're going to give our control vertices. Okay. So this is really nice, because this I can kind of do a whole bunch of stuff too. Okay. So if you want to make bendy forms. Okay. And then if you know you're making a piece with a lot of bends in it, put a lot of points in it. Okay. So this has very low points. So it's a little chunky, but you might want to put more points in it. And you can either do that at the beginning, right? Or you can actually do this. I don't know if this is gonna work. Hold on, let me undo everything. Let me get it back before the surface. Okay, no surface here. I'm going to show you one more thing here too. Now, you don't have to worry about if you to remember this one here, but I'm going to pick the curve, and then I'm going to go to curves, and then I'm going to go down here to rebuild curves. And here, I only have number 4 spans in this. Like if I want a lot of spans in this, I can type 10 or 15 or whatever. I'm just going to give it 10. All right. Hit apply. So you don't really see anything here, but until you go on control vertex. Yeah, see now you see you have more points here. So you're going to need these for some, like some of the students, like I said, have shown me some things that have a lot of bendy stuff in it. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to surfaces. I'm going to go to extrude. Okay. All right. So there we go. So now it looks the same. I mean, the thing looks the same as it was before, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on here, and I'm going to, oops, I got to put this on its own layer again. All right, let's forget. Okay. Now I'm with control vertex. Now, if you notice, I have a lot more points here. So now if I wanted to move these around, like if you want to make a really bendy, wild piece, like I've seen a few students really making some pretty interesting looking things. Okay. So now you can do whatever you want with these, right? And then especially too, if you have like a piece with like a lot of swooping forms, I mean, you can either draw these, like, especially with drawing on some of the model, the image planes you have, you can just draw it by hand, or you can make a single line and then just move all the points around. But you notice this looks pretty nice. I mean, well, the piece doesn't look nice, but it's a nice concept. Like you could see doing some pretty crazy sculptural stuff here. Okay. So that's it for these ones here. And oh yeah, I was going to do one more thing with extrude. So let me undo all these. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to change this. So now here's what I'm going to do on this one. So with this one, I'm going to pick this object here, and I'm going to change its control vertices, right? And I'm going to change the profile. So here I'm going to pick that one. I'm going to shift select this one, shift select this one, shift select this one, and then I'm going to scale. So I'm going to use the scale tool. Okay. And I'm going to scale just these in. So I'm going to change the form a little bit. Okay. All right. Now I got that. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick that form. I mean, pick that curve and then pick this curve. And I'm going to go to surfaces, and I'm going to go to extrude. Okay. All right. So now let me put this on a layer again. And I'm going to make the layer reference. Okay. So now if you notice, look what's happened now. So now I extruded that form, right? So you could put anything you want for the profile. So if you wanted to make a, an element that looked like that, and you can also give it more resolution. Like you can see, this is like a little chunky here, but I mean, you can definitely give more resolution. I'm just doing this for demo purposes. And then, then you can do fun stuff like this. Let me keep that one in X-ray so you can see what's happening. I'm going to have this one in X-ray. Okay, so this one's already in X-ray. Okay, so then I go over here, and then I right click on the curve, even though it looks like I'm on the surface. The surface is actually on a layer, and the layer is in reference mode, so I can't affect it, right? So I'm going to just get the control vertex. Okay, so I'm going to pick that there. I can even use the B key here, which was the soft select. Okay, so that'll soften what this looks like when I bend it. Okay, and you can go over, it's the same soft select from the modeling toolkit. So you access it by typing the B key. Okay. So you see, you can do some pretty fun, interesting stuff pretty quick and easy. Okay. Look at that. That would be really hard to just model. Okay. With that form there, that would be really hard. But with a curve, with two curves, you know, look, I did this in like 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes. Okay. And you can just go crazy with it. So like I've definitely seen a lot of drawings with very kind of linear stuff like this. So this is definitely a nice little tool to use here. Okay. So that's the basics for what we're going to do with surfacing here. Actually, you know what? I have one more thing I can show here. That's MyRail, which that's a little bit of a little trickier tool. Um, let me delete this. I'll do one more with BiRail. Let me turn BiRail on right now. This tool is a little trickier. I wouldn't suggest using this one until you start getting really comfortable curves, but this allows you to have basically two, you can have even more profile curves, and then multiple rail tools, okay? So it's kind of like the extrusion tool, but it's with more, okay? So basically what you need to do, and again, this is in sequence. So you have to first select the profile curves, and then you have to select the rail curves. And then you go up to surfaces and you go to BiRail. I'm going to use the BiRail tool too. You can use one if you want, but you just try these ones. Okay. So I'm going to do that. Okay. All right. Oh, you know what? So this is an interesting thing as well. What's happened is surfaces have a side. So depending on the order you select the curves, it will be inside or out. Okay. So if you ever see this, if you see this black thing, then you can go up to surfaces and you can go to reverse direction. Okay. So if you ever see black, because now you're going to see black on the inside. Okay. And then if you don't want to see that at all, like say you're working on a model, you have to see the inside and the outside, you can go up here to lighting and then you can go to two-sided lighting. Okay. Sometimes you need that. Okay. So this is buried in this lesson here, but if you ever see that black, that's where it is. Okay. So again, got to put the surface. Always remember, put the surface on its own layer, and then make it referenced, okay, or template if you want, okay? Because if not, you'll be trying to pick the curves to do things to them, and then it'll be difficult, okay? So then you can pick full vertex. I'm gonna turn the B key off. I'm gonna turn B. Okay. So here, see now you can see what can happen here. So this is kind of cool too. So again, like surfaces and curves, they're trickier to work with, and some people like them, some people don't like them, but they do have their power to them as well. I mean, they have some pretty cool things about them. They definitely take a lot more thinking, like before you have to really plan things out a lot more with them. Okay. With polygons, you just kind of just like play. You can just start pulling on things. Whereas with these, they're more abstract. You have to kind of think through the curves first. Okay. So, but again, like this, like you see this is definitely how a boat hole would be made. Okay. So, all right. So that's BiRail. Let me delete that, delete this. Okay. And then I'll switch everything off. And there you go. That's all the basics of surfacing that we're going to do. Oh, you know what? There's one more thing. These things never end. Let me just do this with a sphere. Okay. So say you have a Nurbs surface and then you say, oh, I didn't make this in polygons. And you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this thing? How am I going to do this? This is the last thing I'm going to show here. All right. Then what you can do is you can go up into modify and then you can go to convert and then you can go Nurbs to polygons. Okay. So you can press on this and then here you could just give it a polygon count. Okay, so whatever you want. I'll just say 1,000. Okay, same thing. You have to change all these things, you know, so you have to tell each one of quads, you want what the count is, and then you hit apply. Okay, so see there, now that turned that directly into a polygon object. You see, you have both the objects here. You still have the Nurbs, the original Nurbs object, and now you have this new polygon skin on top of it. And then something that's kind of interesting here. Let me put this on its own layer. So it'll be layer 4. Let me put this on its own layer, which would be layer 5. Okay. Let me turn off layer 5, which is the polygons. Let's see if I still have that history thing on. Okay. So yeah, let's check this out. So now I have this on. I'm going to right click on this. So I'm going to actually get to some of these control vertices. Okay. So I'm just gonna just play with these here, okay? I'm just gonna do this for demo purposes. I'm gonna move this over here, okay? All right, now I've modified that, okay? Now let me turn back on, and look at that. It modified my polygon mesh as well. And that the reason for that is because it's got that thing called history. Right now, these are connected. So whatever happens, this is the original object, okay? And then this was the Nurbs polygons were created from the Nurbs. I mean, the Nurbs polygons were created from the Nurbs sphere, right? So this has a historical connection to this, right? You can delete that history later if you don't want them to be linked later. But this is a nice thing because then you can just modify your history. The same thing like where your curves, where your surfaces are connected to your curves, the polygon skin can also be connected to that later. So you can literally just be modifying your curves on your object, and that'll change your polygon skin later. So it's a little complex to think about, but you know, this is what it is. And we've mentioned history a few times in class so far. So there you go. That's what's that? Okay. All right. So that's the basics of NURB surfaces we're going to be doing in class. We'll probably do a few more things. I'll do just some simple objects. Some students might want to go further with some real industrial design objects, some sculptures, or some cars, which we can do that kind of on the side. But this is the basics in class because, like I said, NURBs can get very complex, and you can teach a whole class just in NURB. But there you go. That's the basics of NURBs. Okay, and surfaces.